Hey everybody! Welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Well, good evening, airplane fans, and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube for tonight. Glad to have you here. Tonight is episode number 197, and we're going to meet the members of the All Airborne Battalion, find out more about their mission, their activities, and even some of the fun they've had along the way as well. So we'll find out more about that in just a moment. But whether you are a loyal Warbird Tube fan or you're joining us for the very first time, we're thrilled to have you with us tonight. If you enjoy what you see, please don't forget to spread the word across your favorite social media platforms. We do appreciate it. Now, Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. Find out more about the CAF, our events, our airplanes, and a lot of those airplanes are going out on tour this spring. So go visit our website and you can find out more. commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have some questions. Just type those in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. So either way, we'll try to answer all your questions tonight. So joining us from Camp Toccoa is a band of brothers, as it were. And this is the All Airborne Battalion. Darren, why don't you go ahead and start, introduce yourself and then the rest of the folks there at Camp Toccoa, and then we'll move to the folks on the other screen.
Absolutely. And Steve, thank you for having us. And again, all those listening in, we're tuning in live from Camp Toccoa, Georgia, one of the most historical places for Army paratroopers. And here with us is a pretty awesome band of brothers cast as well. No actors here. We just have some random folks that love aviation, as well as people like to chuck themselves out of airplanes, as well as some volunteers from the camp that keep this place running. I'm Darren Cinatl. I'm the president and CEO of the All Airborne Battalion, as well as the chapter of the 555 Parachute Infantry Association, Malvern Brown chapter. I'm here with Justin Zagota from the Tennyson Foundation and the pilot for our mission this week here at Camp Toccoa. He is serving as the PIC, also with Sean Lockhead, the All Airborne Battalion Director of Veterans Affairs. And Brad Reddick, probably the most important man in this room, is the man that helps keep this place running, the Vice President of Camp Toccoa at Currahee, as well as essentially the site manager for the facility.
All right, and who do we have at Fort Campbell, Kentucky?
Well, I'm Brett Lee, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, 22 years of service, and next to me I have
Alex Sepka Brady. I portrayed Corporal Frank Mellett in HBO's Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
And how we're on this thing is Darren Cinatl and I know each other from the 82nd Airborne when I was the Public Affairs Officer for the division, and through a series of crazy twists and turns, we were all involved with a very important project to continue to tell the story of the legacy of Easy Company, second of the 506, and the Band of Brothers as we all know them. And we are now currently working on a project to continue to tell the legacy of that. And we are now here at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with the 101st Airborne, who are hosting us to continue to tell this story. And we're filming with them this week. And behind us here at this at Old Glory Distillery, we were with Easy Company, we are thanking them for hosting us this week, and we took time away to come over and do this podcast because we really want to continue to tell the story. And thanks, Steve, for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Incredible to think about it. We were talking about, before we came on the air, Band of Brothers was released in 2001. We are coming up on the 25th anniversary of that. But it has had such an impact on the American psyche, and I take it the world as well. It's hard to believe it's almost 25 years. It seems like only yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I only started realizing the true effect of Band of Brothers on the public and on the military, especially the airborne community, probably around the 75th anniversary of D-Day, where I was invited over with fellow castmates we started to speak to locals in Normandy, also current serving troops from the 101st and the 82nd. And we started to realize that how much of an effect this show had on people. And that's when it really started sinking that this is something we shouldn't be forgetting, and the importance of keeping this memory alive. It really started to ramp up in my mind and many of my castmates after visiting Normandy. We were back in Normandy for the premiere in 2001, and not many of us had ever been back since then. And I think Normandy was the catalyst for many of us to start really pushing this legacy and to honor the men that we portrayed. So that was, I say, from there in 75th, that's when we started to realize this was something we need to keep going.
Yeah. Well, let's transfer over to Camp Toccoa, because unless you've watched the series, you probably don't know or understand the history of the camp that's there. And so fill us in a little bit about the history.
Yeah, so for our history, the camp itself was founded in 1938. It was actually started off as a Georgia Guard camp. It was going to be a medical detachment. It was in the process of building up fairly slowly, but they had their footprint here and had a good toehold. December 41 happened. At that point, the federal government said, well, thank you, Georgia. We'll take that. And we're going to turn it into the training facility for the 101st Airborne. At that point, the 506 was the first group that came here to train. The camp was not ready. It was a tent city. It's pretty neat when you talk to certainly recently retired or current active duty folks, and you explain and you start telling that story of when it was beginning, being established. It was a tent city, and then very rapidly was built up. They'll tell me about OPs that were in Iraq, Afghanistan, the same things. As they went back to those places months or a year later, the changes and how rapidly it changed was just amazing. You can see that in Band of Brothers. If the next time you're watching episode 1, the Toccoa version, the Toccoa episode, look in the background as Sobel is berating somebody for whatever infraction. Look over his shoulder. They're constantly building behind them. There's a half-finished barracks. There's just a floor. That's because when the 506 was here, that's what they saw. And so very pleased when the directors and the producers took that amount of detail to it. The intention was for the folks that trained here was to complete their jump training at Toccoa, along with if they're going to be a mortarman, demolitions, those different type things. They would complete their jump training here. The officer staff of the 506 was able to complete that here in Toccoa. They made 2 jumps out at the airport that we still use to this day. And then there's an area that's just up the road from us, about 3 miles. It's called Dix Hill, and they completed jumps out there. So in the process of doing that, there was a little bit of difficulty. The runway they were using was within limits for a fully loaded C-47, but just by feet, just barely. So any changes you have in temperature, wind direction, barometric pressure, all those things, they did have 3 very, very rough landings and takeoffs. Nobody was seriously hurt, but that was just a blessing that nobody was seriously hurt. At that point, the decision was made to have the rest of the folks jump down at Benning. Even beyond that, as different units went through, the 501st, the 511th, and the 517th, they still essentially went through the bulk of their jump school here at Camp Toccoa. And when they went down to Fort Benning to finish up, it was a very rapid process for them.
Where exactly, geographically, is Camp Toccoa?
Yeah, we're in northeast Georgia. We are, to give you a feel for it, we're in the top right corner of Georgia. I mean, we are on the county line. South Carolina is about 15 miles in that direction. So that we're kind of in that corner between Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
Awesome. And the building that you gentlemen are in tonight is very historic in itself.
It is. It was actually built in 1938 when the camp was being established. It's got a really neat history, and we get this information via an interview with Shifty Powers. He said when they first got here, this building was used as a chow hall for about 10 days. They were building their chow hall they were going to use just maybe 300 feet from us. Once that was completed, they moved the tables, everything that was in here, down to the chow hall there, and then this was converted into the PX. So the really neat thing about this building is every one of the guys came in here. Every single one of the guys that trained here came into the PX. Everybody needs a stand. Everybody needs to get a shave kit, those type things. So it's a very, very significant building because when you walk through those doors, all the boys did too.
And how did the All Airborne Battalion kind of come together and end up where they are at Camp Toccoa?
Yeah, so Steve, the concept for All Airborne Battalion is very similar to the rest of. There's a pretty large community of civilian static line training teams that are across the United States, all the way from Texas all the way out to Florida, and we were looking at opportunities to start our own organization and kind of defer our mission slightly and find a new place to train. At the time, my first time coming to Camp Toccoa was in 2017, and as Brad was alluding to, the ability to see the stark difference of what 2017 was to now is in and of itself amazing. At that point, I started looking at taking units here. So serving 13 years in the United States Army, 9 years as a paratrooper, I wanted to start to bring airborne units back here to Camp Toccoa. When I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division with Brett, I took 3 units back here just to see the litmus test of what we could accomplish with the current footprint of the camp. And ultimately, I think it was one day, I think it was after one of those events that Brad and I were sitting there, and we were just looking around. I think we even had a beer in our hands. We were looking like, what if we brought airborne training back here? And we never had a reason really to start it immediately until speaking with Sean, we kind of started putting these building blocks together. And there you can see the HQ building is right there. That's Rene Moreno, who played Ramirez, who's being towed by his fellow castmates, simulating the drag training that occurred here. But ultimately, we looked at it and said, well, I think it's feasible. I think we can actually bring training back here and maybe serve as impetus to continue to grow the camp. Ultimately, we had planned an airborne operation here in July of 23 called Operation Currahee. And little did we know, we also announced our jump team forming on the airfield, where obviously Dick Winters made multiple jumps himself. And we started to look progressively at moving forward. And talking to Sean has an amazing history, probably the most of actually being with the Easy Company men in his time, going to the family reunions and being from Philadelphia, tying into some of the most vocal members of the group, being Bill Garnier and Babe Heffron. He got to meet these men, the real heroes of Easy Company, and ultimately we allowed to get put together this concept, and ultimately led to talking with Alex and a few other of the cast members and us talking to Brett about this concept as well. And we said, hey, this is a tremendous opportunity to link all these projects together, bring airborne training back to Camp Toccoa for the first time in 82 years, and live that legacy that military units were already coming here to do. But it wasn't a tangible experience. It was just merely really associative to the mountain, running Currahee 3 miles up and 3 miles down, coming back, touring this amazing building, going to Currahee Military Museum in downtown Toccoa and experiencing the history there. But we thought, well, no better way to really truthfully bring that history back and reinvigorate the local population as well as people around the world to come to Camp Toccoa by bringing airborne training back.
Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier that, until you got things going, that there were people in the community who had not been exposed to the history of their own community.
100%. Yeah, we were speaking with many people here, and not just the younger generations. We're talking people who had witnessed soldiers training here, but they did not fully understand conceptually what this was. And we've heard multiple stories of Toccoa at one point looking like Las Vegas almost in terms of how popular this boomtown became in supporting the mission here. You're talking over 17,000 men that trained here. So just think about the logistical footprint that this was. And if you look at when the camp started, like the tent city that Brad was describing to what it became, you're looking at a modern camp size that would rival Camp Benning, which later became a fort, or various other camps that existed within the United States military network that allowed these men to train successfully, mainly with geographic, obstacles like the mountain and the terrain that made them a little tougher and a little more tenacious. But truthfully, looking at it, it's been an amazing journey for sure. And this is pictured here is in October, we came back after Normandy. We had a panel discussion where over 100 people came out to hear an update on where we were with post-training, now post-Normandy, and what it looked like. You have representatives from both the aircraft. You have representatives in Mark Lawrence and Renee Moreno from the actors, and a couple active duty members as well as Sean moderating, discussing that impact, not only of the series, not only being back here and bringing training back to Toccoa, but the amazing journey that was Normandy, and then circling back to Toccoa and bringing it back home to where all this started.
Yeah, it is amazing. And before we kind of move off of the All Airborne Battalion, you have several different, goals in mind as far as the unit is, and one of those is PTSD awareness. And talk a little bit about how that works into your mission.
Right, and the great thing about being a part of an organization like All Airborne Battalion or the other jump teams that are in our community, one recently just completed a suicide awareness or PTSD awareness class where essentially we give healthy behaviors or healthy activities such as parachuting or just building and bringing camaraderie together by bringing us all together once again to celebrate what we have accomplished within our own respective military careers, or simply just building friendships with new friends and making sure that we come together to honor the good aspects, the amazing aspects of service, and trying to get away from the negative aspects or the stressors that we deal in day-to-day life, whether you be a civilian or a military member or a police officer, a nurse, a firefighter. These professions all have stressors that contribute to situations that can arise and result in PTSD. And through parachuting is one way to deal with those stressors and find a healthy outlet for them to avoid falling into the pitfalls of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or even at the worst case scenario, suicidal or homicidal ideation. We're trying to prevent that from happening by giving service members, police officers, and other types of professions that have high stress levels an opportunity to not only gather with one another, build camaraderie. The amazing things that, the military is known for is building a strong team, but also to find that healthy outlet. Like I said, and being here at Toccoa, noting some of the stressors that these men experience, mainly at the hands of Captain Sobel, or merely the stressors of running Currahee in under 50 minutes, we could think of no better place to tie that into. And we're excited that we will conduct our first PTSD awareness event in October in conjunction with Currahee's Military Weekend, which honors all veterans, not just paratroopers. But essentially coming back to the camp, we have invited or plan to invite paratroopers who served during the evacuation of Afghanistan at HKIA. Brett and I were a part of that operation, and we saw no better place to bring these paratroopers than back to Toccoa. Let them experience running the mountain. Let them experience getting the exposure to their roots, whether they were in the 101st or not. Every paratrooper can tie something back to this camp as an origin, but also give the opportunity for them to listen to a Gold Star mother, a Afghan commando who was present that was rescued by the 2nd Battalion 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, which was one of my regiments that I served in while in the 82nd Airborne Division. and then also get that opportunity to get out of a perfectly good airplane like Placid Lassie while they're here, in order to give that rounded effect where this is not someone in a lab coat asking someone what their problems are. It is a way and a means for our like-minded personnel to gather, celebrate service, admit to tragedy and strife, but overcome it through the joint overcoming of adversity, whether it be leaping from an airplane or running up Currahee. And I can think of no better place than do it to right here at Camp Toccoa.
There you go. Speaking of jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, who are these guys?
Alex, take it away.
Those guys. Yeah. So yeah, that's us just before our first jump. But let me just go quickly back to the All Airborne Battalion, who these are the guys that got us to this point and beyond. They took us to Camp Toccoa, a historical place, a place that resonates with us as a cast. It's somewhere that we never visited, but we went to on set to complete our training, our airborne training with this fantastic team that instilled us the confidence, as Darren said, to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft, and to get us to do it in a way that we felt safe, but also to instill the history and the legacy of what we're about to do. So that brings us to that photograph, which is taken in front of the most amazing, beautiful aircraft, Placid Lassie, at Toccoa, and just before our first jump.
And when did the jump take place?
So that was, I think we were 20th of March. Is that right, Darren, when we started the Airborne School?
Yep, the last 2 weeks of March, we covered training from ground all the way up to the jump phase, and condensed 3 weeks of training into one, which is a feat in of itself sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So, Alex, what was it like so you had visited, quote unquote, visited the camp and on set, but then to be in the actual setting, well, what was that like for you?
It was a very, very surreal moment. When we filmed the show 25 years ago, we had all filmed in the UK, in Hatfield Studios in Hertfordshire. And we were then taken off to a location very close to the main buildings and the location that we were filming in. And that was going to represent Currahee. So you almost felt like we knew it, although we'd never been there. But to walk through the gates was a highly emotional moment for all of us. To be at the birthplace of Easy Company, where these guys went through their training, where these guys, blood, sweat, and tears, became the company that you see represented in the show, I still can't believe, I have to pinch myself to say we actually did that. I think the biggest one for me was to actually run Currahee, to run that mountain that we see on the t-shirts, we see in the show, to do it with my brothers was something I would never, ever have thought I was going to do. To then take it back to actually be at Camp Toccoa doing our airborne training. It's like, you can't even write this stuff. It just was the most amazing experience. It was the beginning of something that we wanted to do, not for ourselves, but to make sure that we don't forget the men that we betrayed, but then also to bring it forward to the guys that are serving, guys and girls that are serving today, to complete the circle, to make sure that we show that the same things that these guys went through in Normandy, Toccoa, Stone, the camaraderie, the feeling, the brotherhood, and the sister is still there today, from D-Day right through to today.
So how did you convince yourself that, as an actor who had portrayed a paratrooper, to actually jumping out of an airplane?
Now that happened again back at the 75th. We'd quite a few of us had been out to go out and bring some World War II veterans back out to Normandy, some for the first time and some had been there previous. And we were watching the C-47s cycling around, and then watching the jumps. And we just, sitting around after a few beers, we should do this to honor the guys that we portrayed. We went through boot camp, we went through jump school, but we never jumped. We took it to a point, but we never managed to do it. But we thought, what an amazing way of keeping their memory alive, and also to really get an understanding, a true understanding of what these guys felt. I mean, the guys, you stand at the door of a C-47, I can guarantee you it's the same feeling that you feel today that the guys back then felt. It's exactly the same. And we wanted to experience that, to try and understand what these young men who'd never been in an aircraft before were about to do. And that was kind of it. Yeah, the 75th, we were watching, that would be amazing to be able to do that. And it just perpetuated from that moment. We were like, every time we went back to Normandy, like, we got to do this. We have to do this. And we didn't know how, but we thought, we have to do this.
Absolutely awesome. I salute all of you for doing that. And it really, and also goes into the Airborne Battalion. Your educational outreach is another one of the pillars of your organization. And this absolutely, does it by showing that, so they did this in the Band of Brothers, but they also did it in real life. And you can do it too, or whatever you put your mind to.
It's almost like going to an air show for the first time. Educating and inspiring future generations. You never know what interaction you'll have with someone. In fact, Brad and I were talking about this today. We opened the camp up to the public to come watch airborne training, and we didn't know what the showing would be. I mean, dozens of community members, some traveling as far as South Carolina and North Carolina. I think we had one from Florida just to come watch what these men, did, 83 years ago. And for that, to expose that mission and that history to new generations. We have the Welton family here. We first all met Wyatt Welton at the airfield when he was 6 years old. He is probably the most decked out C-47 clad young man in the planet. He is fascinated by airplanes, and the C-47 is his favorite of them all. And it's the ability to do this mission. Jumping is just the fourth in line of our LOE. Our number one is to educate and inspire, similar to the CAF mission, because without that lineage, without carrying that on, we can't continue to tell their stories. We cannot continue to honor the men. Like Alex said, portraying these men on the silver screen is one way, but again, doing it for real and showing a live, living view of history is a complete separate, monster even in itself, and allows people to get more exposure outside of simply watching it on a TV screen. You get that tangible, tactile feeling of being here, feeling that power of the camp, hearing the roar of those radial engines, seeing training occurring, and maybe that one interaction might encourage someone to serve their country, serve their community, or merely maybe want to jump out of an airplane themselves, or to be a pilot like Justin. We've all had those interactions in our lives, or maybe one person significantly impacted us more than anybody else. And it doesn't have to be a parent. It doesn't have to be someone and it could be a random stranger. And it's amazing to see those connections. And we've seen interactions turn into people coming to actually train here. One of our first students, we met in Normandy in 2018 when he was a reenactor. He's here now, next door, getting ready to prepare for a jump tomorrow. So those interactions are amazing. And there's no better way, as you see on the screen. We also took a trip down to the National Infantry Museum. We took a trip down to the original Lawson Army Airfield, where the test platoon 85 years ago this year conducted its first mission on August 16th, 1940, which is the impetus for National Airborne Day as declared by then President George W. Bush. So it is these engagements and these experiences that we get to share that are often way more powerful than merely jumping out of an airplane.
Well, and speaking of sharing experiences, there's a story behind this picture as well.
Yeah, that was yeah. There you go for Darren.
Oh no, Alex, that was your guys' first trip to Fort, now Fort Morejoy, but formerly Fort Benning. Well, there's the picture. Yes, please, Alex, that is definitely you, brother.
Yeah, so Darren completely blindsided me with this visit. I didn't know this was happening, and we had a visit to Raveneville, to Marmion Farm, and obviously I know my character. There's some very well-known photographs of the character that I portrayed, Corporal Frank Mellett, at Marmion with Forrest Guth and Talbot, and Floyd Talbot, and some of the other Easy Company fellas. And we hear about within the show, we know about at this point we know about Breakwater Manor, and we know the action from Dick Winters and the men that were involved in that action. But learning about the Ravenel boys and Marmion Farm, which is something that is not shown in the show, was mind-blowing. I mean, if you read the book, it is in there, but to find out what these guys did and to then be taken to this memorial garden where the men that served within the 101st that had been involved in saving Ravenel and Marmion are commemorated, and it's for all the fallen from throughout D-Day right through to Bastogne, right through to the end of the war, all the guys that fell but were there at Marmion and there at Ravenel are represented here, and each of these guys has a tree. And this is me in front of Frank Mellett's memorial tree, and that was an incredibly emotional moment. Yeah. Yes, there we go. That's myself and Brendan Moreno, who played Joseph Ramirez, standing on the spot to the day, pretty much to the hour, where Corporal Frank Mellett was stood holding a slightly different flag, the one that they were fighting against, and holding that flag in front of that door to the day, to the hour. And that was an absolutely incredible experience to be there. Obviously, we had jumped in by this point, had our first jump under our belts, and that was unbelievable experience to be at that place, to be on the spot where Frank had stood 82 years ago to the day, was something I'll never forget. I don't think you can top that, really. Apart from jumping out. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the documentary that is in the works as well, to kind of wrap up this 25th anniversary of Band of Brothers, and tell us a little bit about the background of what's going on, what you've done, and what's yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. There's been a lot of twists and turns, and it's gone in a lot of different ways. And as we said before, a lot of people from different backgrounds, but with the same passion. And the passion has been to continue to tell about the legacy of the Toccoa men, who were among many that marched across the continent to secure Europe from the tyranny of Nazism, right? But they're also telling the story of the entire World War II generation. And so, brothers like this, that we have come together with our brothers on the screen at Camp Toccoa. And it has been really an incredible journey for us. And I call him my brother. I love Alex. I mean, he's got my heart because he shares my passion. He shares these guys' passion. And the others that are back there with the Easy Company soldiers, they all share this common passion. And that's been really one of the greatest rewards of this entire thing, is to be able to go along on this journey with them. But what we're trying to do here is to commemorate, of course, what was done that was done during, D-Day at Camp Toccoa, at D-Day, Normandy, Bastogne, all the way through. But what we also want to continue to talk about is what they did by telling that story in 2001 with the premiere of Band of Brothers. We are now 25 years, next year, 25 years on. And believe it or not, we're all getting a little bit grayer, but that story is now starting to fade as well. And just like we want to continue to speak the names of the Easy Company men, we have to now go back and continue to remind people of the power of the Band of Brothers story that was premiered on HBO 25 years ago. And I think we start to forget how powerful it was. And Darren can tell you, all the folks that know about the commemorations that were going on up to 2001, there was a demonstrable change when that show came out with what was going on in Europe around with the commemorations in Normandy after Band of Brothers. There was a demonstrable change about the way that people thought about World War II by what the Band of Brothers depicted. And so we are now trying to reinvigorate that discussion about how a show like Band of Brothers can get people to understand what the World War II generation did. And of course, Easy Company is a focal point about how to understand that sacrifice. Because it's too big. Easy Company is an incredible story that we have to understand the scope of it. And it's a remarkable story, but we want people to understand what was at stake. Because one day it might be at stake again, right? So we've told the story of Toccoa. These guys went and did the training. They've gone and jumped at Normandy. Now we're here at Fort Campbell. We want to close the loop. We want to show what is Easy Company doing today. The weaponry has changed. The tactics really haven't changed all that much. It's just they're more lethal. They can talk more and faster. They can move faster. But the characteristics, the attributes, the sacrifice, the willingness to sacrifice has not changed. And so what we did this week was we spent time with Easy Company, with the 101st. We've talked from soldier all the way up to Major General Sylvia and Sergeant Major Walker, all the way down to the soldiers. And they all amazingly had the same things to say. Technology changes, but the soldier's a soldier. Infantryman is an infantryman. And they all, to a man, talked about the impact, the profound impact that Band of Brothers had on their decision to join and what it means, what they internalized as far as the legacy that they are trying to continue today to keep the legacy of Easy Company alive and the responsibility they fill. And so we're here now, here at Old Glory, trying to thank them for hosting us for this week.
Wow, it is amazing. And tell us a little bit about the folks in this picture.
Well, yeah, Alex didn't come along for this one. So this was, we haven't really talked about Normandy. Normandy was, it was like drinking from the fire hose. Besides the fact that we had these guys jump out of the aircraft twice, we're filming a documentary, and that was insane. It's like running a marathon with your hair on fire. But to cap it all off, we decided to jump over to London and interview Damian Lewis and Bart Foley at a very generous home. They welcomed us into their home because they were fans of Band of Brothers as well. They let us come in and tear up their house to interview Damian and Bart. And Damian was very gracious to give up his time, as was Bart. And the guy that is to the right of Bart is Chase Millsap, who is our director. On the other side of Damian is Chase's brother Spencer, who is our director of photography. And to Chase's right is Stuart Birdie, who is a friend of us all, an incredible photographer and also an architect. Yeah, just incredible guy. We all love him. Everybody here is just giving of themselves. This is a complete, really, nonprofit. Nobody's getting paid. We're all doing it through our passion to tell this story because, we really believe that it wouldn't be told otherwise.
And for all of you, for all 6 of you who are on screen, and I'm sure for all the others who are involved, there is that passion that just is leaping through the screen at me tonight. And it can't express my thanks enough for the mission that you're on and in continuing to perpetuate the legacy of World War II. And I mean, that's what the Commemorative Air Force is all about. And we're glad to partner with you and the All Airborne Battalion to kind of continue our educational mission and move forward. So with the documentary, we're looking at probably some next year, but we don't know exactly where we'll see it, but it will be out there somewhere, right?
Yeah. We, this is still work in progress. We're on the fly. We're keeping the wheels rolling, as it were, as much as we can, and it couldn't be moved forward without all the guys you're seeing here. The guys from All Airborne Battalion, Sean Leckard, who put us all in touch with Darren, created this entity, this sort of crazy force. And then for all of us to link together, there's a lot of cogs, a lot of things turning, but yeah, we are pushing through, and we'll get this made, we'll get it finished. We're still not at the finish line. We got a lot of editing to do. We need to raise money to try and get this film finished and get it out there. We will get it done without a shadow of a doubt. But we couldn't do it without support of everyone you see here. And the time and the effort and the energy that everyone here has put in together, it just astounds me. It's been quite something, but yeah, we're looking through to next year to get this released. Where it's going to be released, we don't know, but it will be released. You guys will see it, and we'll make sure that we get it out there.
Very good. There we go. So tell us a bit about this photo here.
Darren? Actually, this is
Gene Metcalf, right?
Yeah, this was probably one of the most powerful moments that we had in our trip in March of 2024. Gene Metcalf has a very, very unique story. A Toccoa man assigned to the 501st at the time. He essentially joined the military to be a part of the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment out of the 82nd Airborne Division. He was diverted to Toccoa to be a 501 man, and was arrived here, was training here, was doing quite well. Ran into a little bit of trouble when he was given some non-judicial punishment for cleaning his coveralls when he was instructed to go clean some machine guns instead. He said he didn't want to have his uniform soppy wet and mold over, and he wanted to take care of his equipment. Ultimately, he was sent off of the camp, did not complete his airborne training, was sent to Fort McClellan, Alabama to reprocess and rehash essentially basic training as an infantryman. They quickly realized that he was a little better physically trained than the other candidates. And they asked him where he came from, and he said, I was at Camp Toccoa. And they said, why are you here? So then they proceeded, after a couple other reassignments to the Northeast, he actually went back to Fort Benning, completed airborne training, and by the grace of God was reassigned to the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, the original regiment he wanted to be a part of, and by a matter of days missed the D-Day invasion. And he recounted to us that he remembered seeing men leave, being in the barracks, and days after the invasion, people coming to retrieve their belongings because they had been killed in action. He would ultimately jump into Operation Market Garden as a member of the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, was captured and wounded, and ultimately repatriated back home, where he lived a very humble life. Not many knew of his story. Recently, he did publish a book covering his service and his time here from Camp Toccoa all the way up through the end of the war. And one of our brothers in the 82nd Airborne Division Association reached out and said, hey, I met a guy that has this unique story. He was a Toccoa man in the 101st and in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I called Brad immediately. I said, we got to figure this out. I got to call him. And I called Gene. He at the time was and still does, I believe, driving. His wife picked up and said, Gene's not here. He's at a VFW meeting. And I said, okay, well, is he with his, Tracy, his daughter? I could just call on the phone and see if we can call her on the ride back. And, oh, no, she's not with Gene. Gene's driving by himself. And I said, okay, over 100 years old and driving, and this man must be pretty sharp. And sure enough, the garage opened and Gene walked in, and I was able to talk to Gene for 30 minutes, and I invited him to Camp Toccoa. And he said, I have not been back there in 82 years. And we said, we have to get you back. And he agreed. Picture there is Tracy, his daughter, to his right, Gene in the middle, Gene's wife, and then he is greeting Lieutenant Colonel Ed Cottrell, who flew 65 combat missions in Cinatl, Belgium. Two World War II veterans greeting each other. One a private, the other lieutenant colonel. Both had some amazing stories. And to see Gene's face, I don't think there was a dry eye in this room when this meeting happened, because the roller gates opened up into the pavilion, parachutes were out, equipment was out, and Gene was just greeted with a wall of paratroopers as he arrived back to Camp Toccoa for the first time in over 82 years.
That is amazing. And I'm going to kind of jump forward here because, Justin, I want to get a little perspective from you on being one of the pilots of Placid Lassie, a D-Day veteran airplane. You're, of course, not quite that old. So what is it like to fly, first of all, to fly a C-47 that is an older aircraft? And then do you ever think about the history of the airplane while you're flying?
So for me, it was always a dream to fly Warbirds.
Okay.
I got into aviation from watching documentaries on the History Channel and having the big book of World War II aircraft sitting in my desk when I was a kid in school. So it was always my dream. And when I had the opportunity to come on board with the Tunison Foundation and fly Placid Lassie, dream come true. And I can remember last March when we did the drop here at Toccoa, thinking, the first time I watched Band of Brothers was in middle school when I was probably 14, and realizing now that I essentially got to live that and do that and keep that memory alive is, it's why I do this. The passion of keeping Warbirds flying and flying Warbirds is to share the legacy and keep the legacy. And the fact I get to do that is just icing on the cake.
And you also helped take the airplane across the Atlantic last year for the 80th anniversary.
Yep, that was an opportunity I could have never dreamed I would ever have. I was able to help the foundation, and we flew long and cold across the Atlantic into Europe. And I was very fortunate to be able to drop All Airborne Battalion, be their pilot on the day that we got to do their first drop into Lafayette? Yeah, Lafayette Causeway. A lot of DZs, they all come together, but Lafayette Causeway, and also was fortunate to do a cross-channel jump and truly invade France, take off in England, drop paratroopers in France, and then land in France. So that was an incredible experience that I'll never forget.
Well, and it was sort of an extended tour. You didn't go directly to Normandy. You spent some time in England as well, and then in France. And then did you also go to Berlin for the? We
go to Berlin. We did go to Wiesbaden. We went to the Army airfield there. They invited us there to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Berlin airlift. Mm-hmm. And we did a couple of celebrations there. And then we went on to an airfield called Tannheim, which is about just a little bit north of Munich. So we were able to tour Germany as well for a little bit before returning back home. The total trip, we were over there for a little over 5 weeks.
How many hours do you have as a pilot in the C-47?
About 170 hours in Lassie now.
Okay. And so people always ask this question: how did you get into the cockpit to fly the airplane? What was the training? How did you get there?
So the training to fly Lassie, or really I tell anyone, the training to fly any Warbird starts with go fly a Cub, go fly a Champ. Most of these Warbirds are tailwheel aircraft and older aircraft, and the best way to get started that is you just start flying your Cub. And start flying little airplanes, and then you move your way up from there and find a museum or find an organization that can really help on the ground. The first ever time I helped with Placid Lassie, I was actually in college, and I knew one of the pilots, and he said I needed someone to babysit the back door at the aircraft. And I actually was fortunate enough to do that for a few air shows while I was in college. And this was years before I had the opportunity to actually come on as a pilot for the foundation.
What's ahead for the airplane this year? Do you have air shows that you're planning on attending, or is the schedule still in flux?
Yep. Schedule is still in flux, as they always are with air shows, but we have a pretty good schedule this year. Once we get back to our home base of New York after training here in Toccoa, we have a couple idle weeks, and then I believe our next biggest event will be at World War II Days at Reading, Pennsylvania. Okay. And then we have a few shows lined up throughout the year, backdropping these guys in August and then November as well.
Very good. So what you've been doing a little bit of training this week. What else is ahead for the group this week?
For the big push is obviously we're hoping the winds do calm down for we can conduct our first airborne operation tomorrow onto Winters DZ, which is the Toccoa Stevens County Airport. We will then continue to push our new students, those that have never exited an aircraft before, combined with our refresher students, those that have trained previously to conduct airborne operations but have not done so in quite some time. So we'll continue to do that here at Toccoa, both at a DZ in Carnesville. The DZ owner is pictured previously with our 3 World War II veterans that attended with us in March of 2024 last year. And then we'll continue to train, then transitioning, taking our students to familiarizing them with drop zone duties. We'll familiarize them with other duties and opportunities they have to participate in events similar to this, and also starting to prepare them for future operations in Europe this year, and our follow-on to support the documentary hopefully in 2026, where we'll get an opportunity to continue to tell the story through the 82nd anniversary of the D-Day landings in 2026. So a very, very busy schedule. It's been an amazing few days here so far. We've had George Luz Jr., son of George Luz, who is a very prominent character played by Rick Gomez in the HBO miniseries. We have Sarah Ramirez Keene, who is the granddaughter of Joe Ramirez, who, when Renee Moreno comes back from Fort Campbell, he's going to get a chance to re-engage with Sarah again and discuss playing Joe in the series. And we have a member of the Randy family. I'd like to pretty much pass that to Sean, because Sean has been pivotal in doing this and arranging these things to happen. Sean?
Yeah, we just try to keep the reach out, and the families, for me, and I think I've known Alex for about 15, 20 years now. And we've kind of grown up together, especially going to different events along the way, which started out as a combination of the veterans and the actors. And in some cases, there was luck there where you had the two could actually meet. It's important for Alex. I've never had the chance to bring telling that story, but as time goes on, the veterans get less and less. And as of 2023, all of these E-Company veterans are no longer with us. So the importance of what Alex is doing and what his colleagues are doing just becomes so incredibly more important. We have to keep those stories going, keep the education going. I've been very fortunate over the time doing this to become closer and closer with a lot of the families. So as I reach out to the family members, I'd be very excited to come back to Toccoa. Kathy Rainey Brennan is actually coming back for the first time in a very long time. That is Mike Rainey's daughter. If you remember at the very end of the miniseries where Dick Winters is on talking about a letter that was written by Mike Rainey, that is his daughter. And she has a flair for this as well. She's led tours in Europe as well with some of her colleagues. So it's important for us to keep the families involved. Every year, Bill Garnier had done all the family reunions for all of the 506 Easy Company guys. When it got to a certain point, Bill couldn't do it anymore. They kind of started to fade away. Then the family members started to step up. Even though there are no veterans coming back, haven't been for a couple of years now, the families still get together every year for the reunion. And that group continues to grow and continues to get closer and closer. But the cool thing about it is the stories that are told as new people come on. Here's my scrapbook. Here's all these photos. Here's things that nobody knew about. Now we have a collective audience that can then take it and pass it on to other folks, spreading that education and spreading out the information that needs to get out there. So for me, it's that important level of just continuous education and bringing on the next level of our younger generation. We want to make sure that this does not fade away.
And reminding people as well, Steve, it's not just the soldiers, it's not just combatants in this story. Family members played a huge role in this. We still have pictured previously on the slide deck, you had Martha Rigaud, who just turned 93 years old today. Happy birthday, Martha. She was 12 years old on D-Day. We spent time with her in the village of Gren, which is our second airborne operation last year into France. And we participated, had our band of brothers, our new band of brothers, march through the village and attend the memorial ceremony there. But getting a chance to talk to someone like Martha, a French citizen who did tremendous things for the American paratrooper, hosting her saviors every year from 1984 until the last passed away in mid-2000s. Now we assume that role. We share that legacy and take her stories and also share that with family members like the Randy family, the Ramirez family, the Luz family, and those that have the opportunity to come back here to Toccoa to experience that. And you can see Sarah Ramirez-Keene in that blanket right there. It was pretty chilly when the aircraft arrived. I mean, it's just amazing to hear these stories, to hear George Luz share original audio of these men speaking. And if you haven't heard the Mike Randy quote that is pictured at the end of the series, it is one of the most powerful things you can ever hear, where a grandson asks his grandfather, Grandpa, were you a hero during the war? And the response is, no, but I served in a company of heroes.
Awesome. Before we wrap up tonight, we do have a short video that we'd like to show. And normally you start a show with what's called a sizzle reel, right? But we've had such a great conversation that I think this might be a nice way to kind of wrap things up, and give you a little preview and a little recruitment for the All Airborne Battalion. All right. A couple of questions that we had that just popped in from some of our viewers. Here's a good one. In your opinion, what's the best museum representing the 101st?
Wow. Well, hey, guess what? Newsflash. They're building a brand new 101st Airborne Division. Air Museum. They are going to be opening in the fall, a soft opening in fall of this year. We didn't even know this, but the Major General Sylvia told us about it. It's the walls are up.
It's on its way
right off the Campbell Boulevard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that one isn't built yet. So, but for me personally, I had the honor of visiting Bastogne for the 80th, for the Nuts Festival, Nuts commemoration, and I went to the 101st Airborne Museum in Bastogne, and that was incredible. That was an incredible place. The artifacts they had there, the dioramas, I hadn't seen anything quite like that. The scale of stuff that they had there was magnificent. And obviously, the Toccoa Museum as well.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you have to plug that. Yeah. Everyone.
Very good. And kind of following up on what you were talking about before, Richard is asking, or states, the families fight wars. And what legacy projects do you know of that are currently underway with the descendants of the greatest generation to help tell those stories? You familiar with any?
We quite frequently bring family members to these events, ranging from Operation Firefly, one in Pendleton, Oregon, where we were able to, unfortunately, we did have a living descendant of the Triple Nichols, but he is now 108 years old and could not travel, but his family came to participate in the mission, and now his grandson is a qualified paratrooper, much like his grandfather was, training with the sister jump team, and ultimately preparing to jump into a historic drop zone once again, like his grandfather did. We have the family members that come back here to Toccoa, sometimes randomly run into family members that just are coming to visit for the first time. Having Sarah for the first time, First Sergeant retired Maggie Peppers did a lineage tree on I think legacy.com, and ultimately found Sarah, who will undoubtedly go to the reunions from now on to share Joe's story, and she has shared it with us to all these events. And it's not just World War II, it's Korea, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, all these conflicts that have not been overshadowed by World War II. World War II is one of the most pivotal conflicts of our time, but have not gotten quite the light that they need to get. All Airborne Battalion is proud to be a part of the 555 PIA, having a chapter called Melvin Brown to honor the smoke jumper legacy and the Triple Nichols, to highlight their story, and hopefully one day get a documentary similar to D-Day to Today, Band of Brothers Legacy, to tell those gentlemen's story, because that story is amazing. And although we only have 2 that we know of living survivors, we know there's family members out there, and the power, truthfully, for us is associating with the 555 PIA, because we get to hear all these secondhand stories from those that lived through it. Seeing the impacts that these heroes had from World War II all the way to today will allow us to shape future events and follow on drop zones. And even if it's not a jump, an event that can educate and inspire future generations to learn about service and sacrifice.
And speaking of jumping, what's the story behind this picture?
So this was a chance meeting. We had been at the commemorations on June 6th at the Koval-Samir Cemetery. We had one of our paratrooper brothers, Mark Lawrence, who had had a slightly difficult PLF at Lafayette, and we heard that Tom and Steven Spielberg were right down the front of the commemorations. We were, lesser bodies. We were somewhere mid-pack, and Doug Spain, who played Private Tony Garcia, he decided to grab Mark in his wheelchair, and with Nolan Hemmings, who played Staff Sergeant Chuck Grant, smashed their way through the crowds right down to the very front, and literally wheel Mark into the legs of Tom Hanks and say, "Remember us?" And that's how that picture came about. Our fantastic photographer, Stuart Bertie, he came down. He captured the moment of us introducing ourselves to the man Tom Hanks and to Stephen, and they were great. They were like, "Yeah, we know what you guys are doing, and heard about, they know about the project. We're very supportive of what we're achieving, and they can't wait to see it." And we were, very amused to get Mark right up to the front, and so was Tom and Stephen to to see Mark with his leg sticking out. And Nolan obviously is Nolan. He'll put his arm around anyone.
There you go. Awesome. If folks want to find out more about the Airborne Battalion, where you're going to be, you can become a member, you can support. Give us your website address.
Sure, it's www.allairbornebattalion.com, and you can reach out to us via email at info@allairbornebattalion.com, and please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We put out products daily, and we'd love to hear from you, and we encourage you to come and join and live the legacy with us.
All right. Are we going to see some footage from the jump tomorrow if the winds cooperate?
Absolutely, and you'll also see the footage once we transfer over to Colonel Sync DZ, which will allow our students and refreshers to get out. The weather looks, knocking on wood, looks pretty solid for Friday. So hopefully we'll get the demonstration jump for our students to see it in real time tomorrow with some senior experienced jumpers. And then we'll get out to the DZ for our students and refreshers to allow them to experience what Alex experienced last year for the first time.
Great. Well, Justin, make sure you get them to the drop zone and all in one piece, right?
Yeah, will do.
All right.
If anybody ever had any question about the impact of Band of Brothers, we sat down with the current 2506 Battalion Commander, who, as everyone knows, used to be a position filled by Dick Winters. And he told us that every brand new member of White Currahee has to watch 4 episodes of Band of Brothers. The first episode to learn about training. The second episode to learn about coming together as a team with a simple plan that is executed violently at breakthrough. The next episode is Bastogne, to learn about brotherhood and getting through hardship. And then the next episode is about caring through the lens of Doc Rowe. And if that doesn't show you that this still is relevant, that it is being taught to current members of 2506 and the entire 101st Airborne, but more importantly, that this is a story that needs to be taught to the next generation of people that are going to defend this country. That's why we're doing this here. So just want to say, if you want to know more about where this project is going, go to abandofbrotherslegacy.com, follow us along. You will be seeing more from us. Yep. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Well, thank you. And Brett and Alex, thank you for taking time out of the party to come spend an hour with us. So we'll let you go back and enjoy the rest of the evening. And thank you again for being a part of the show tonight. To the guys at Camp Toccoa, I guess you've got spaghetti on. You ready for that?
We might go for seconds. I don't know. The heavier you get, Steve, the faster you come down. So we want to reduce the lower extremity impact. We might skip on second serving there.
Well, that sounds good. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and to you, our loyal audience, thank you for joining us as well. And if you have any thoughts on tonight's show or ideas you have for future topics, just drop us an email at media@cafhq.org. If you like what you saw tonight, please share it across your social media platforms. We do appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell icon. You'll get notifications when our new episodes are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss, wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. And for the Commemorative Air Force, have a great evening.